Welcome back. Today we're diving into something special that might be hiding in your pocket change or tucked away in that old jar of coins on your dresser. I'm talking about four seemingly ordinary US coins that could be worth thousands, even tens of thousands, more than their face value. What makes these particular strikes so valuable isn't their age or precious metal content, but rather fascinating minting errors that transformed everyday pocket change into treasured numismatic gems. The 2006 Nebraska State Quarter, the 1988 Quarter, the 2019 Penny, and the 1983 Dime. Coins you might handle without a second thought, but with specific variations that can make them true treasures. Let's explore the stories behind these modern rarities and what makes them so special in the collector's market. Let's start with the 2006 Nebraska State Quarter, a coin that perfectly illustrates how even modern U.S. currency can hold remarkable value when things go slightly wrong at the mint. The Nebraska Quarter was part of the 50 State Quarters program, one of the most successful coin initiatives in American history. Released on April 3, 2006, as the 37th coin in the series, it features Chimney Rock, that iconic natural formation that guided pioneers along the Oregon, California, and Mormon trails during America's westward expansion. But what makes certain Nebraska quarters exceptional isn't their historical symbolism. It's a dramatic die clash error that occurred during production at the Denver Mint. In normal minting, two dies, the obverse, heads, and reverse, tails, strike a blank coin planchet to imprint designs on both sides. Sometimes, however, these dies accidentally strike each other with no planchet between them. This collision transfers elements of each die onto the other, creating fascinating hybrid images when they're subsequently used to strike coins. In the case of the Nebraska-era quarter, the reverse die clashed with the obverse, creating what collectors call the floating roof variety. If you look closely at affected specimens, you'll notice what appears to be an extra line floating above the roof of the log cabin depicted at the base of Chimney Rock. This line isn't actually part of the intended design. It's an impression from the obverse die that transferred during the clash. What makes this error particularly valuable is its relatively limited occurrence. While millions of Nebraska quarters were produced, only a small percentage exhibit this dramatic die clash error. The severity of the error varies too, with some coins showing more pronounced floating roofs than others. The most desirable examples display a clear, distinct line that appears completely separated from the cabin below. I still remember when these first started appearing in circulation. There was such excitement in the collecting community. People were checking every Nebraska quarter they received in change, hoping to spot that telltale floating line. Hunting for these errors became something of a national pastime, and it renewed interest in coin collecting for many who hadn't looked at their change in years. In terms of value, these error coins command impressive premiums. While a standard 2006 D Nebraska quarter is worth just 25 cents, the floating roof variety can sell for anywhere from $100 to $500 depending on condition. The finest examples in mint state condition have been known to fetch upwards of $1,000 at auction. That's quite a return on a quarter. To properly identify this valuable variety, you'll need at least a 10x magnifying glass. Examine the cabin at the base of Chimney Rock carefully. On normal quarters, the roof line is single and connected to the structure. On the error coins, you'll see what looks like a second, parallel roof line floating above the cabin. The most valuable examples have this floating line clearly separated from the actual roof with no connecting metal between them. The condition of these quarters significantly impacts their worth. A heavily circulated example might bring $100 to $200 from a specialist collector, while an MS-65, Mint State 65, specimen could command $500 or more. The absolute finest examples, those graded MS-67 or higher by professional grading services like PCGS or NGC, are the true prizes, potentially worth over $1,000 to serious collectors. Here's a fascinating tidbit about the floating roof quarters. Their discovery actually changed how many collectors approach modern coinage. Before this error gained widespread attention, many numismatists focused primarily on older coins, believing modern minting processes were too precise to produce valuable varieties. The Nebraska quarter error helped spark renewed interest in examining modern coins for mistakes, leading to discoveries of other valuable recent errors. I've heard from several collectors who found these quarters in bank rolls they purchased specifically to hunt for errors. One gentleman in Ohio told me he discovered 3 floating roof quarters in a single $10 roll from his local bank, a $1,500 return on a $10 investment. Stories like these are what make the hobby so exciting. The possibility of finding something truly valuable in ordinary circulation coins. Another interesting aspect of these error quarters is that they maintain their government-issued legal tender status despite their errors. Unlike some other types of error coins that might be confiscated if discovered before leaving the mint, these slipped into circulation through normal channels and remain perfectly legal to own and collect. The discovery timeline of the floating roof Nebraska quarter adds another layer to its mystique. Interestingly, these errors weren't immediately recognized when the coins were first released. It took several months before sharp-eyed collectors began noticing the unusual floating lines and bringing them to wider attention. By then, many examples had already entered circulation and become worn, making pristine specimens all the more valuable. If you're examining your own coins for this error, lighting is crucial. The floating roof is most visible when held at an angle under direct light, where the raised extra line casts a slight shadow. Don't be fooled by normal die polishing lines or wear marks. The true floating roof error appears as a distinct, raised line that exactly mimics the shape of the cabin's roof below. The Nebraska quarter error also demonstrates an important lesson for collectors. Mint errors don't always diminish with time. Sometimes, as dies wear down through extended use, errors become more pronounced rather than less. Late die state Nebraska quarters often show the floating roof more distinctly than early strikes, contrary to what many might expect. For authentication purposes, reputable third-party grading is highly recommended if you believe you've found a valuable example. Services like PCGS and NGC can confirm the error and assign a grade that helps establish value. While fees for such services typically start around $20 to $30 per coin, the authentication is well worth it for specimens that might command hundreds of dollars. The market for these error quarters remains strong nearly 2 decades after their minting. Unlike some numismatic fads that flare up and quickly die down, the floating roof Nebraska quarter has maintained its desirability among collectors. This lasting appeal speaks to both its visual distinctiveness and its historical significance as one of the most famous modern minting errors in the state quarters program. Keep in mind that the 2006 D. Denver specimens are the ones to look for. The Philadelphia minted 2006 P. Nebraska quarters don't exhibit this particular error. This Denver-specific nature of the error adds another layer of specificity that collectors appreciate. It reminds us that each mint facility, with its unique equipment and processes, can produce different types of errors even when striking identical designs. So next time you're going through your change or that jar of accumulated coins, take a moment to check any 2006 quarters with chimney rock on the reverse. Look for that distinctive floating line above the cabin. And remember, what seems like just another 25 cents might actually be a numismatic treasure worth hundreds of times its face value. That's the enduring thrill of coin collecting. Extraordinary value can be hiding in the most ordinary places, just waiting for the right pair of eyes to discover it. Now let's move on to our second remarkable find, the 1988 U.S. quarter with what experts call the double die obverse error. While at first glance this might look like just another Washington quarter you'd use for parking meters or laundry machines, certain specimens from this year contain a minting anomaly that transforms them from pocket change to prized collectibles. To appreciate why this error is so significant, we need to understand a bit about how coin dies are created. The U.S. Mint uses a process where a master hub impresses the design onto working dies, which then strike the actual coins. Normally, this transfer happens in a single, perfect alignment. But occasionally, there's a slight rotation or shift between impressions, causing certain elements of the design to appear doubled. This is exactly what happened with some 1988 quarters. The 1988 double die quarter isn't as immediately obvious as some other famous double dies in U.S. coinage history, like the legendary 1955 double die Lincoln cent. It's more subtle, but no less valuable to knowledgeable collectors. On affected quarters, the doubling is most noticeable in the lettering of Liberty and in the date 1988. If you look closely with a magnifying glass, you'll see what appears to be a shadow or echo of these inscriptions, slightly offset from the primary impression. What makes this error particularly intriguing is its relative scarcity combined with its modern vintage. The 1988 quarter doesn't immediately register as old to many people, and millions were produced for circulation. However, numismatic experts estimate that only a few thousand exhibit the double die characteristics, making them genuinely rare despite their recent mintage. I recall speaking with a collector from Pennsylvania who discovered one of these quarters in a roll he purchased specifically to search for silver coins. He almost overlooked it entirely, focusing on much older specimens, until something about the Liberty inscription caught his eye. That quarter, which cost him just 25 cents, was later authenticated and graded MS 64 by PCGS and sold at a specialized auction for just over $1,800. Not a bad return on investment. The market value of these 1988 double-die quarters varies significantly based on condition. A circulated example showing moderate wear might bring $200 to $400 from a dedicated error collector. Specimens in uncirculated condition with minimal handling marks can command $800 to $1,200. The finest known examples, those graded MS 65 or higher by the major grading services, have sold for upwards of $2,500 at major numismatic auctions. The history of their discovery adds another fascinating dimension to these quarters. Unlike some dramatic mint errors that were identified almost immediately, the 1988 double-die quarter flew under the radar for several years. It wasn't until the early 1990s that numismatic researchers began publishing articles about the variety, by which time millions of 1988 quarters had entered circulation and sustained wear. This delayed recognition means that pristine examples are genuinely scarce. Many were handled extensively before anyone realized their significance. If you're examining your own coins for this error, pay particular attention to the word Liberty on the obverse. Using a 10x magnifying glass or stronger, look for a secondary impression that appears slightly offset from the primary lettering. The doubling is typically most pronounced on the letters L, B, and R. The date, 1988, may also show doubling, particularly on the first 8. Authentic examples will show consistent doubling across these elements, not just on a single letter or number. Another telltale area to examine is Washington's profile. On some of the more dramatic examples, you can detect slight doubling along the contour of his nose, lips, and chin. This requires good lighting and a trained eye, but once you've seen it, the doubling becomes unmistakable. It's worth noting that both the Philadelphia and Denver mints produced quarters with this error in 1988. The Philadelphia minted coins, without a mint mark, are more common among the error variety, but the Denver specimens, with a D mint mark, tend to command higher prices due to their additional scarcity. If you're lucky enough to find a double-die 1988 D quarter in mint state, you've got something truly special. The 1988 double-die quarter teaches us an important lesson about numismatics. Significant value doesn't always correlate with age. Many collectors focus exclusively on 19th century or early 20th century coins, assuming anything minted after 1950 is too common to be valuable. But as this quarter demonstrates, modern minting errors can create rarities that rival much older coins in value and collector interest. I've spoken with several mint employees over the years about double-die errors, and what's fascinating is how preventable they theoretically are. Modern minting technology has safeguards specifically designed to prevent misalignments during die production. Yet, errors still occasionally occur, a reminder that despite our technological advances, the human element and mechanical imperfections persist. Each of these errors tells a story about the minting process and represents a moment when something unexpected happened. The 1988 double-die quarter has another interesting dimension. It's becoming increasingly difficult to find examples in circulation. Unlike the 2006 Nebraska quarter we discussed earlier, which is still relatively recent and might turn up in your change, most 1988 quarters have been in circulation for over 35 years now. Many have been worn smooth or removed from circulation by collectors and curious non-collectors alike. Each passing year makes raw discoveries less likely, potentially increasing the value of known specimens. There's also an interesting psychological aspect to hunting for these quarters. Since the doubling is subtle, it requires a level of attention and patience that many casual searchers lack. I know collectors who've examined thousands of 1988 quarters without finding a genuine double die. Then there are the lucky few who discovered them without even looking, like one woman in Michigan who found one in her son's piggy bank while helping him roll coins for a school project. She had the coin authenticated, and it graded MS 63, worth about $900 at the time. For authentication purposes, be aware that there are other minor varieties of 1988 quarters that show what appears to be doubling, but aren't true double dies. Machine doubling, which occurs during the striking process rather than during die creation, can create similar-looking effects but doesn't carry the same premium. True double die errors will show consistent, sharp doubling with a specific directionality, not the smeared look that characterizes machine doubling. If you believe you found a genuine 1988 double die quarter, professional authentication is essential before making any sales plans. The modest fee for third-party grading, typically $20 to $30 per coin, is well worth it for a coin that could potentially be worth hundreds or thousands of dollars. I'm often asked whether these quarters will continue to appreciate in value over time. While no one can predict the future of any market with certainty, the track record of significant double die errors suggests long-term appreciation. The famous 1955 double die cent and 1972 double die cent have consistently increased in value over decades. There's little reason to think the 1988 double die quarter won't follow a similar trajectory, especially as the finite supply dwindles through loss, damage, and permanent addition to collections. So check those coin jars, search through your quarters, and pay special attention to any dated 1988. Remember to look closely at the word Liberty and the date for that telltale doubling. What might seem like just another quarter could potentially be a four-figure coin hiding in plain sight, waiting for your discerning eye to discover its true value. Next, let's examine what might be the most overlooked treasure in American pockets today, the 2019 US. 1 penny, specifically those with the W mint mark from West Point. Now, I know what you're thinking. A penny from 2019? How could that possibly be valuable? But this particular cent represents one of the most fascinating limited releases in recent U.S. mint history, and savvy collectors who recognize its significance have been quietly accumulating these coins since they first appeared. The story of the 2019 W. Lincoln cent begins with an unprecedented decision by the U.S. Mint. For the first time ever, the West Point Mint produced Lincoln pennies with their facility's W. mint mark, something that had never happened in the cent's long history dating back to 1909. What makes these pennies extraordinary isn't just the novel mint mark, but the method of their release. Rather than selling them in mint sets or special collector products, the Mint did something truly revolutionary. They mixed a mere 10 million of these special pennies randomly into bags of regular 2019 Philadelphia and Denver cents, then shipped them to banks nationwide for regular circulation. To put that number in perspective, while 10 million sounds substantial, the Philadelphia and Denver mints produced over 7 billion pennies that year. That means these special W mint-marked cents represent less than 0.15% of 2019's penny production, truly a needle in a numismatic haystack. The historical significance of this release cannot be overstated. West Point, known primarily for producing gold coins, commemoratives, and some silver issues, had never before placed its mint mark on the humble 1-cent piece for circulation. This represented a dramatic break with tradition and created an instant modern rarity that could be found by anyone, from serious collectors to children emptying their piggy banks. I remember the excitement that rippled through the collecting community when the Mint made this announcement in April 2019. Forums lit up with strategies for finding these elusive cents, and social media groups devoted to coin roll hunting experienced unprecedented growth. Suddenly, everyone was checking their change, and penny rolls became hot commodities at local banks. It was reminiscent of the state quarter frenzy, but with much lower odds of success. The identifying features of the 2019 W cent are straightforward but require close inspection. The key diagnostic point is the small W mint mark located on the obverse head side of the coin below the date. Standard 2019 cents will show either no mint mark, for Philadelphia minted coins, or a D for Denver. This tiny W is the only external difference, but it transforms an everyday penny into a highly sought-after collectible. Current market values for these pennies have stabilized at impressive levels for such a recent coin. Circulated examples typically sell for $10 to $20, representing an instant 1,000 to 2,000% return on face value. Uncirculated specimens in grades MS 63 to MS 65 regularly command $25 to $50. The premium specimens, those graded MS 67 or higher by PCGS or NGC, have sold for $100 to $200. And the finest known examples, those rare MS 68 or MS 69 specimens with perfect or near-perfect surfaces, have achieved prices over $500 at auction. The market trajectory for these cents has been particularly interesting to watch. When they were first discovered, some early examples sold for extraordinary premiums, over $500 for ordinary uncirculated specimens, as collectors raced to be among the first to own them. As more entered the marketplace, prices naturally adjusted downward, but they've maintained strong value relative to their face value and recent mintage. One fascinating aspect of the 2019 W-cent story involves the condition of discovered specimens. Since these coins were intended for circulation and mixed with regular cents, many sustained light handling marks before being recognized as special. This means that pristine, high-grade examples are genuinely scarce. Every fingerprint, light scratch, or contact mark potentially reduces the grade and value. Finding an MS 67 or better specimen in the wild is remarkably difficult. Most high-grade examples were recognized and protected very early in their circulation life. I've heard some remarkable discovery stories since these cents were released. A retired school teacher in Ohio found 3 in a single $25 box of penny rolls she purchased specifically to search for them. A teenager in California discovered one in his change from a fast food restaurant and, recognizing its significance immediately, had it professionally graded. It came back MS 66, worth about $75. These stories highlight the democratic nature of the hobby. Valuable coins can truly be found by anyone with knowledge and sharp eyes. The 2019 W-cent also created interesting discussions about modern numismatic value. Traditionally, a coin's worth has been tied to its age, precious metal content, or historical significance. But these cents are recent, made of zinc with a thin copper coating, and commemorate nothing specific. Their value derives entirely from their artificial scarcity and collector demand, a purely numismatic premium unrelated to intrinsic worth. This represents a significant shift in how we value certain modern coins. If you're hoping to find one of these special cents in circulation today, your chances are increasingly slim but not impossible. The U.S. Mint intentionally distributed the 2019 W-cents across all geographic regions, but many have already been removed from circulation by knowledgeable collectors. Your best strategy is to obtain penny rolls from banks, particularly from areas where numismatic awareness might be lower. Rural banks sometimes yield better results than those in metropolitan areas, where collectors quickly exhaust the supply. When searching, use good lighting and a magnifying glass. The W mint mark is small but distinct when you know what to look for. Be methodical. Many collectors use special trays or sorting methods to efficiently examine large quantities of cents. Patience is essential. Even at their initial release, the odds of finding one in regular circulation were roughly 1 in 700 pennies. The distribution pattern of these cents has created some interesting regional variations in discovery rates. Collectors in the eastern United States, particularly in states closer to the West Point Mint in New York, reported higher success rates initially. This suggests that the first shipments may have been distributed more heavily in nearby banking regions before reaching more distant states. Today, however, the nationwide mixing of currency through commerce has likely evened out these regional differences. Another interesting aspect of the 2019 W-cent is its effect on coin roll hunting as a hobby. The U.S. Mint's decision to place valuable coins directly into circulation reinvigorated interest in searching ordinary coin rolls for treasures. Bank tellers across America reported significant increases in customers requesting boxes of penny rolls, sometimes entire pallets, in the hopes of striking numismatic gold. This created occasional friction, with some banks limiting coin roll distributions or charging fees for the service. So next time you receive change or spot a penny on the ground, take a moment to check the date and mint mark. If you see 2019 with a small W below it, don't dismiss it as just another cent. That humble coin represents a historic departure from U.S. mint practices, a modern rarity that could be worth 10,000 times its face value in the right condition. And if nothing else, the story of the 2019 W cent reminds us that valuable treasures can still be found in the most common places, sometimes hiding in plain sight in your pocket change or between the cushions of your couch. Let's round out our exploration of modern numismatic treasures with our fourth featured rarity, the 1983 U.S. 1 dime, specifically the no-mint mark Roosevelt dime from Philadelphia. At first glance, this might seem like the least impressive coin on our list. After all, 1983 isn't particularly old. Roosevelt dimes are incredibly common, and Philadelphia minted coins from this era typically don't carry substantial premiums. But appearances can be deceiving, and this particular dime variety represents one of the most significant modern U.S. mint errors. The story begins with standard mint procedure. Since 1980, all U.S. dimes minted in Philadelphia were supposed to carry a P mint mark, a fairly recent change from the mint's historical practice of omitting mint marks on Philadelphia struck coins. However, in 1983, something extraordinary happened. During the production process, some working dies failed to receive the P mint mark during preparation. When these defective dies were placed into service, they produced what numismatists now call the 1983 No-S Roosevelt dime, coins that mistakenly resemble the pre-1980 Philadelphia issues with no mint mark. This error's historical significance is substantial. Unlike some mint varieties that result from die cracks, cuds, or strike anomalies, the missing mint mark error represents a fundamental oversight in the die preparation process. It's especially notable because it occurred during a period when the mint was placing increased emphasis on quality control and mint mark standardization across all denominations. What makes this particular error fascinating is its relative scarcity combined with its unassuming appearance. Numismatic experts estimate that perhaps 10,000 to 15,000 of these no-mint mark dimes entered circulation, a tiny fraction of the approximately 673 million Philadelphia dimes produced that year. Finding one requires careful observation, as the absence of something, the mint mark, is less immediately obvious than the presence of an unusual feature. I recall speaking with a collector from Minnesota who discovered one of these dimes in a roll he obtained specifically to find silver Roosevelt dimes, pre-1965 issues. He was initially disappointed to find only clad dimes from the 1970s and 1980s, but while checking dates, he noticed something unusual about one 1983 specimen. After comparing it with reference books, he realized he had found the elusive no-mint mark variety. That coin, in uncirculated condition, later sold for $450, quite a return on a 10-cent investment. The market values for these dimes reflect their genuine rarity. Circulated examples typically command $50 to $100, while uncirculated specimens in grades MS 63 to MS 65 sell for $200 to $400. The premium examples, those graded MS 67 or higher by PCGS or NGC, have achieved prices of $800 to $1,200 at auction. For the absolute finest known specimens, MS 68 and above, prices can exceed $2,000. Identifying this variety requires careful examination of the obverse, head side, of the coin. On standard 1983 Philadelphia dimes, a small P mint mark appears to the right of Roosevelt's portrait, above the date. On the error variety, this area is completely smooth. No trace of a mint mark is present. It's important to distinguish this from worn or damaged coins where the mint mark might be faint. On genuine no mint mark errors, the area shows the same surface texture as the surrounding field, with no depression or remnant of the missing letter. The 1983 no mint mark dime offers an interesting lesson in mint production processes. The absence of the mint mark wasn't due to a die breaking during use or wearing away over time. Rather, It occurred because the mint uses a multi-stage process to create working dies. Master hubs impress the basic design onto working hubs, which then transfer the design to multiple working dies. The mint mark, however, is added separately to the working dies in an additional step. In 1983, some working dies somehow skipped this crucial step before being placed into production. What's particularly intriguing about this error is how long it remained undiscovered. Unlike dramatic errors that are immediately obvious, the missing mint mark is subtle enough that these dimes circulated for months before collectors began noticing the anomaly. By the time the variety was widely recognized and published in numismatic journals, most had entered circulation and sustained at least some wear, making mint-state examples genuinely scarce. I've heard fascinating stories about how these dimes have been discovered over the years. One retired postal worker in Pennsylvania found 3 in a single roll obtained from his bank. A teacher in California discovered one in her classroom's coin collection drive. These stories highlight how accessible the hunt for this variety remains. Unlike some rare coins that were removed from circulation decades or centuries ago, the 1983 no-mint mark dimes continue to turn up in pocket change, cash registers, and bank rolls. The regional distribution patterns of these error dimes present another interesting dimension to their story. Based on early discovery reports, it appears that the defective dies were used primarily during a specific production run at the Philadelphia Mint, with the resulting coins initially distributed to banks in the northeastern United States. Collectors in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and New York reported finding these dimes with greater frequency in the mid-1980s. However, decades of circulation have dispersed them throughout the country, making geographic location less relevant for today's searchers. For authentication purposes, there are several key points to consider beyond the absent mint mark. Genuine 1983 no-mint mark dimes will show all the standard design elements of that year's issue, with proper spacing, rim details, and surface characteristics. The date should be properly formed and positioned. Counterfeit examples, which are rare but do exist, often show subtle inconsistencies in these details. When in doubt, professional authentication through PCGS, NGC, or ANAX provides definitive verification. The long-term investment potential of these dimes appears strong. Unlike some modern errors that gain temporary attention but fade from collector interest, the 1983 no-mint mark dime has maintained consistent demand for nearly 4 decades. The combination of its genuine scarcity, the significance of the error, and its association with a popular long-running series, Roosevelt dimes, creates sustainable collector interest across multiple segments of the numismatic market. Preservation considerations are particularly important for these dimes, since their value derives entirely from their status as mint errors rather than from precious metal content. Maintaining their condition is crucial. Even minimal additional wear can significantly impact value. If you discover one, handle it only by the edges and store it in an inert holder specifically designed for coins. Never in paper envelopes or plastic containers containing PVC, which can damage the surface over time. The hunt for these dimes in circulation continues to this day, though with increasingly long odds. Most have likely been removed from active circulation by now, either by collectors or through natural attrition. Your best chance of finding one in the wild is to obtain rolls of dimes from banks, particularly from areas where numismatic awareness might be lower or from older rolled coins that might have been stored for years before entering circulation again. What I find most compelling about the 1983 no-mint mark dime is how it represents the intersection of human error and collecting opportunity. A simple oversight in the production process created a numismatic rarity that continues to reward observant collectors decades later. It reminds us that despite technological advances, the human element in coin production still occasionally creates valuable anomalies worth many times a coin's face value.